Hi, everybody. This is Larry Greene again. Today, we're talking about Mercury Leadership, of course, and it's one of the items that I call good on paper. This is our third episode, and this is June 22nd, 2022. All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about coaching. As most of you know, I'm an executive coach. I've been doing this for about 10 years, and I work with lots of different individuals and different companies dealing with the different individuals within the company, whether it's the CEO, the executive team, management groups, pretty much all kinds of people, all types of people who have requested help via coaching. It seems like in the world today, there are lots of different types of coaches, a lot of people doing this work. Like I said, I've been doing it for about 10 years, working with a lot of companies. And I've got a really broad business background that gives me a great platform for it as well. I have lots of people that come up to me and say, hey, I know somebody that needs a coach. And my response to that is always, no one needs a coach. Nobody needs a coach. There are people who want a coach and want to be coached and want something in that realm, but it's not something that I would ever try to sell someone, because you're either interested in it, you want it, you kind of know what it is, possibly, but not something you want to foist on somebody. So what is coaching and what isn't it? Coaching to me is always about asking questions. If somebody's requested a coach or a coaching session, what I want to know is what's on their mind, what are the issues in the front of their mind, what are the things that are below the surface, and really listen for what they're not saying oftentimes. And so most of the time the session is about asking questions and listening for what they're saying, listening for what they're not saying, and just let them get out what's on their mind. And it's a job of patience as well. The more that I step back and listen and give them room to think out loud and to expand on what their thoughts and feelings are, the more valuable the session will be for that person. What it isn't, what coaching is not, is consulting. Coaching is asking and not telling. So whatever it is that they want to talk about, that they've got concerns about, is what we'll typically end up talking about, discussing. Oftentimes, just like I said, just listening to what is on their mind. Oftentimes, people need a place just to kind of dump their thoughts or hear themselves talk out loud. I had a client one time that thought he wasn't getting any, or thought he wasn't doing it right. And at the end of it, he would always say, all I ever do is talk when I'm with you. And I say, well, you're talking, but I'm listening to every word, listening to every thought, what's underneath that thought. And so I guess my question to you, sir, is how does it feel for you? He says, well, I get a lot of value out of doing this. I said, well, that's kind of the point. Whatever it is you're looking for, if it feels valuable to you, then it's valuable. It's never about the coach, never about me when I'm working with somebody. Occasionally, I'll work with people who, during the coaching or at the end of it, it's clear that they're looking for something and maybe they aren't finding it. And sometimes it's fairly obvious to me what's missing. So then I will delve slowly or cautiously into areas of telling, of making recommendations. But typically I'll ask first if they are open to a recommendation or a suggestion, and then step back and be sure that that's what they really are looking for. And if they are, then I'll dip into my experience maybe, or tell stories about what I've observed other people, other executives, what practices they utilize that might be helpful to the coaching client, and see if that's a fit. And that seems to work well as well. So I'm always looking for what the value proposition is for the client, and I typically ask them in the end, is this what you're looking for? Is this the thing that you're here for? And most of the time it is. And if it's not, then I'll question that as well. If this isn't it, then what am I missing? You tell me. Oftentimes people say, well, who hires a coach? What type of person wants or needs a coach? And it's people from all walks. I've coached every executive at every level. larger companies, smaller companies. And what I find as I get to know people is that everybody's human. Even the most successful people are still just people with hopes and dreams and doubts. There's more doubts at a higher level executive than you might think, because of course their job is to be reassuring to their employees and their staff and to lead them in a positive, confident way. But that doesn't mean that they're always confident about what's going on. And so those are, whatever the issues are that are troubling the executives or the managers, the leaders, whoever it is I'm talking with, they bring to the coaching session, because it's a confidential session, always confidential. And they often don't have someone to confide in or anybody to mentor them. And that's the relationship oftentimes that they're looking for from their coach. One of the things that I've observed over and over again is they don't have anyone. If you're in a leadership role, you don't have anyone necessarily to validate whether you're doing a good job, the right job, are you going in the right direction? And I look for that. I look for their, what are their instincts? How are they approaching issues and problems? What's their attitude? And those are the types of things that I often will kind of hold up a mirror to and reflect and show them. I had a client recently that very, very successful leader. And I can tell that his confidence is a little shaky, even though he's had lots of success. And so I go kind of in depth oftentimes and say, listen, the one thing I observe is that your instincts are extremely sharp, on target, and you make really, really good, thoughtful decisions. You take care of your people extremely well. You really are at the top of your game in many, many ways. And I guess it still always surprises me at how grateful they are to hear those words. And he even said, nobody ever says that to me. Nobody ever tells me that. And I just reassure them. I said, I'm very sincere about that. I observe a lot of people. I work with a lot of different types. And your instincts, the way you make decisions is very, very succinct, very clear. I can tell you're very thoughtful, very intelligent the way you do things. And you take all the factors into consideration before you make decisions. And so I want you to just give yourself a little pat on the back that you're doing a great job. I can tell also by looking at your company that it's really well run, that your employees and your management think very highly of you. You've got happy people working for you. You're a great leader. And those are the types of things that they don't hear. And I really give that encouragement and that validation to people often. And I'm always very sincere about it. And if there's gaps somewhere, I talk to them about that. And if they're interested, I always ask that if they're open to recommendations, if there's things that they're not seeing, then I'll talk to that as well and ask questions and delve into it and try to find out, okay, what's behind this? Where is that behavior coming from? And, oftentimes I, of course, want to make sure that my clients are receiving value, but whether they are or not is up to them. And of course, I ask in different ways, what's the value that you're receiving? What is this doing for you? I can see it sometimes, or at least I think I can, but I don't want to assume that, what the values they're receiving. A lot of my clients, however, are longtime clients. I've worked with people for many years as their executive coach. And oftentimes I'll work with various people, a number of people within those same organizations. And what I look for the value is, how is the individual evolving over the years? What is their mindset like, their confidence, their attitude? How is that evolving over the time that we're coaching? And also, how is it impacting their company, the questions and the issues that they bring to the coaching situation, and try to observe that and make sure that there's short-term value and long-term value. Short-term being, what are they getting out of each session? And if I've coached them for a long, long time, what's the long-term value? How have they changed as a person or evolved as a person? Of the younger people that I coach, oftentimes they're family businesses. I do work with a lot of family businesses. Very typically, it's a father and son situation. And the father wants the son to grow into leadership, and that's typically the intention of the son as well. But there's usually a gap. Oftentimes, there's relationship issues between the father and son that get tangled up in that movement for the son to grow into leadership. And so I coach into all of those issues, the father leader side and the son follower side of that. And it's first of all, it's a lot of fun, because if people have good intentions and they really want this, then they work hard to make those transitions happen to where the father can, in fact, hand the business off to the son a little bit at a time. And it's a lot of fun to watch the confidence grow in both sides, and not just the son, but the father having confidence in the son, and the son building his own confidence and being able to take over and lead. And it's a multifaceted thing as well. You'll have the employees of the company who have been led by the father, and they're the followers of the father typically, and then the son is trying to find his footing in that realm too. And to see that slowly transition to where more and more of the employees will turn to the son instead of the father as time goes on. And that's what you want. You want the transition to be consistent and move forward at a certain speed, so that it serves all of the needs and wants of not only the leaders and the owners, but the employees as well. So a few of them that I'm working with at the moment, it's really nice to watch that transition happen in a way that is not, or that is very, very satisfying for everyone. I've also worked with some where they'll thrust an offspring or a son, sometimes a daughter. I don't work with too many of the daughters, because that's just the way it is with my clients at the moment. Is mostly it's a father-son situation. I have worked with some where the mother was the leader and then the son came up through the ranks, but where sometimes they'll thrust the son in at too high of a level, and then the employees have no respect for them because they haven't earned anything. And they may not even be knowledgeable enough to be in a leadership position or even close to it, and they'll try to thrust them in at too high of a level, and that can be pretty chaotic, and sometimes it can be lead to some failure and lose some employees, and it can be very costly. So it's really I'm working with one at the moment where there's a son that's been thrust in too high too soon, and he really isn't even attempting to grow into the position, but he's carrying a vice president role, and he can barely even spell vice president. So it's going to be very costly for everybody involved, and they are losing valuable employees because of this play. And it's not a good thing. It's kind of painful to watch, but when it works well, it's very, very valuable. And the ones that I've worked with that are successful, they really lean into the coaching. They expect a lot out of it. And of course, I try to deliver what it is they're looking for. And so it's a lot of fun, of course. And I love doing this work because I like helping people in business and to succeed and grow. I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, the other part that I offer my clients is that kind of goes hand in hand with coaching, is strategic advisory. And this is something that I think I do a little bit differently. And so I'm going to do a little bit of a commercial here for Mercury Leadership. Is consultants typically go in and tell people what to do, kind of hand them a manual and go, okay, good luck with it. Here's what I say you should do. And coaching, like I said, is all about asking. The way that I perform strategic advisory is I typically end up moving further into the company, kind of be embedded is the way I call it, into the company, and work with various levels of leaders and management, but also either help them craft a strategy of moving forward or help them to execute on the strategy that they have. Oftentimes a company will have kind of a rough strategy, but they'll stall out on moving on it. And when they stall out, then sometimes sales will be stagnant, profits will be, not stellar. They need to improve their profitability. And there's lots of little tweaks within the business, including the culture and maybe the wrong people in the wrong seats, and maybe needing some upgrades in technology, lots of different things. And so when I'm end up embedding myself in the company to a degree, I can kind of look from above, kind of the 30,000 foot level to some degree, and then maybe the 10,000 foot level, if you want to call it that. I can see things that maybe they don't see and help them come up with a strategy to move the needle forward on, if it's sales, profitability, upgrading the staff, cutting cost, whatever those things are. And so the difference to me of consulting and strategic advisory is that being with that embedded model, if you will, and I stay and work with them on execution. I track the execution. I track pretty much everything that they want to do. I watch the timeline and make sure that they're successful, as opposed to just handing them a manual and going, okay, here it is. Here's what you need to do. And I end up working for longer terms with companies towards these types of goals. And it's a successful model. I really enjoy it, and it's really, really good for the company. And as I'd say, just like with coaching, I'm always looking out for what's good for the client. Recently, I had a client I've been working with for years, but I went into a strategic advisory role for about a year, and that was about 4 months ago. The first year was up about 4 months ago. At that time, I came to the client and I said, well, let's review what our goals were for the year and see where we are. So in the review, I told them, I said, it looks like we've only reached about 25% of the goals that you set for the past year. Then we discussed the reasoning behind it. And I said, the reason is you as the leader are not executing. You are not following through on what your commitments are. And so we had to have that difficult conversation and came up with a plan to move the needle forward. And it's a pretty big departure from the way we were approaching it, move some people around, included or inserted a couple of new executives to get the company really moving, because I said, I do not want to waste your time and money by continuing on this path. If we've only hit 25% of the goal in the past year, to me, that is not acceptable to continue on that. So I had developed a different program, a different path for them, presented it, was accepted, and then we've been moving forward on that for about the last 90 days, and it's working very well. So that's my approach. Like I said, that's kind of my commercial for Mercury Leadership and what we do here. But I love everything about business, everything about coaching. Anytime I can see my clients individually and as companies succeed, that's the win for me. I just love anything about business. Would love to work with more companies like this, and of course I will. I'm also on a few boards of directors and look forward to being more in that role. And that's a little bit of a different role from strategic advisory or coaching. But again, it's all about helping businesses move forward, helping their employees be successful just as much as the leaders, because that, in my mind, certainly is what really makes a business successful, is having the right team leading the right rank and file employees so that everyone has success and shares in the profits. So that's my rant today. And so this is an episode of Good on Paper. Larry Greene here. If this podcast was interesting, please click the like button and share this with someone else. Thank you.